Mash Burnedead, an ordinary boy living in a world where magic decides everything, except there's one small problem. He has zero magic. And in this world, no magic means you're not supposed to exist. But Mash isn't too concerned. Why, you may ask? His priorities is eating cream puffs and working out like his life depends on it. Which, well, it kind of does. In a world where everyone uses magic in their daily lives, there's a boy named Mash who lives deep in the forests. He's unbelievably strong, but there's one thing that makes him different from everyone else. He can't use magic. Mash lives with his father, Burnedead, in a small hut. Their life is peaceful, though a bit unusual. One day, Mash comes home, but he's so excited that he breaks the door, forgetting whether it's supposed to be pushed or pulled. Yes, this is the face of him being excited. Burnedead gets upset, but Mash apologizes and promises to fix it. When he tries, he only makes things worse, hammering the door against the frame. But it's okay, because after, they sit down together for a nice cup of tea. Mash doesn't understand why Burnedead insists on making him stronger physically, but that's all they do: train, train, and train. Burnedead has never explained why, but he's trying to prepare Mash for something that Mash doesn't even know about. One day, Burnedead leaves the house, warning Mash not to go into the city. But Mash, curious about a special cream puff at a bakery, can't resist. He sneaks out in a cloak to explore the city. As he walks through, he sees people using magic to do everyday things, but he's unimpressed. He thinks that everything they do can be done with their hands, no magic required. When Mash arrives at the bakery, he orders the cream puffs, but in his excitement, he accidentally bends all the coins he pulls out of his pocket. The baker is shocked, but Mash just fixes them by straightening the coins, causing the baker to freak out. After getting his treat, Mash walks around the streets, enjoying the pastries, but everyone stares at him. He wonders why, but it's because he doesn't have the magical marks on his face that everyone else has. Meanwhile, Officer Brad is reading about the top student at the Magic Academy, the Divine Visionary, and how this title comes with fame and rewards. He's interrupted when a call comes in about a strange man walking around the city with no mark. When he hears about Mash, he thinks he's found the one the report is talking about. Meanwhile, Mash bumps into a drunken officer named Terry, spilling his cream puff and causing trouble. When Terry gets angry and starts yelling at him, Mash tries to be nice and offers to clean Terry's uniform, but ends up ripping it off by mistake. As the situation gets more chaotic, Brad arrives and sees Mash as the person from the report. He's ready to question him when Burnedead suddenly shows up and drags Mash away. But Brad isn't far behind, sending a magical bird to chase them. Back at their house, Burnedead scolds Mash for disobeying him, but he forgives him in the end and punishes him with more training. Mash completes his workout in just 5 minutes, lifting weights effortlessly. But when he heads home, he overhears Brad talking about how society has gotten rid of people who can't use magic, calling it a necessary sacrifice for a better world. Burnedead, who has faced a lifetime of failure and loneliness, reflects on how he came to raise Mash. He had once thought about giving up on life until he found Mash, a baby abandoned because he had no magical power or marks. Burnedead took him in, knowing that they both had been cast aside by society like yourself. Back in the present, Burnedead is pushed by Brad, who demands to know where Mash is. Burnedead refuses to tell, but suddenly, Mash bursts through the door, knocking one officer away. The battle begins. As Mash fights the officers, he shows just how strong he really is. Despite not having magic, he easily defeats them, leaving them stunned. When Brad uses his magic to try and take down Mash, he's shocked to see Mash simply swat away the spell with ease. After an intense battle, Brad realizes that Mash's strength is something to be reckoned with. But he offers Mash a deal. If he agrees to enroll in the Magic Academy and become a Divine Visionary, Brad promises to back him up and help him gain society's acceptance. Mash, seeing no other choice, agrees to the deal, even though it means stepping into a world of magic that he doesn't understand. However, he has to hide the fact that he's completely magicless, all while aiming to become the greatest mage the world's ever seen. Mash arrives at the prestigious East Magic Academy with a fake magic mark on his face, ready to take the tough entrance exam. The exam has a passing rate of less than 3%, and things are already looking intense. As Mash arrives at the exam field, a man named Luchai, who's overseeing the test, notices him. He's confused when he sees Mash casually lifting weights like it's no big deal. This is not the place for working out. Luchai tries to stay calm and sees Mash reading a fitness book while doing squats. He also spots Burnedead and Brad in the background, watching over Mash. Luchai makes a dramatic entrance, announcing that he'll be overseeing the exam, and everyone is in awe because he's known as a powerful mage. Mash, however, thinks his entrance is too flashy and makes a comment about it, which makes Luchai want to fail him. Luchai quickly starts the exam, using magic to prepare the venue, impressing the other students. But Mash isn't impressed. He tells Luchai that he could have just taken them to a room where everything was already set up. This only makes Luchai dislike him more. The exam begins, and the applicants face a challenge where the words on their papers keep moving around. Luchai enchanted the papers with magic, so they need to break the spell to pass. Burnedead and Brad think Mash is doomed, but Mash uses his strength to make the words stop moving, crushing his pen and aligning the letters just by force. Everyone is amazed as Mash finishes the test quickly and perfectly. He continues to breeze through the rest of the exam using his incredible physical abilities, surprising everyone. Luchai, however, starts thinking of ways to get rid of Mash. Next, Luchai makes a maze appear from the ground, giving everyone 30 minutes to reach the goal. A girl named Lemon approaches Mash and asks to team up, so they start walking together. But Lemon keeps falling for the traps in the maze, and Mash quickly realizes she's slowing him down. While he's distracted, Lemon uses magic to restrain him, claiming it's for a good reason. But Mash easily breaks free and dashes off because he's determined to finish the test. As he runs ahead, a dangerous creature appears and challenges Lemon with a riddle. She fails and gets attacked, but Mash, ever the hero, punches the creature and knocks it out with one hit. Lemon is surprised that Mash saved her, and he explains that they probably have the same goal, so he felt bad for her. She worries they won't make it through the maze in time, but Mash has a plan. Meanwhile, Luchai is sure Mash will fail, but suddenly, the ground shakes, and Mash crashes through the maze walls, creating his own path. Other students accuse him of cheating, but Lemon defends him, confessing that Luchai promised to get her into the academy if she kept Mash from reaching the goal. Luchai admits this and becomes enraged, unleashing his magic and threatening to fail both Mash and Lemon. He asks them if they want to challenge him, but Mash, annoyed, punches Luchai with a single blow, telling him he's gone too far. At that moment, the headmaster, Wahlberg, shows up, announcing that the final interview is about to begin. Wahlberg will now be the examiner. Mash is the first to be interviewed and is surrounded by school officials. They ask him a few questions, and they don't seem impressed with his answers. But Wahlberg finds him interesting and asks why he saved Lemon, even though he didn't have time to finish the maze. Mash admits he just felt like he would regret not saving her. Wahlberg sees that Mash is someone who acts on instinct, but wonders what he would do if faced with a creature stronger than him. To test him, Wahlberg summons a large creature and threatens to harm a doll that contains the soul of Mash's beloved father, Burnedead. Mash tries to stop the creature by punching it, but it doesn't work, and his hand starts to bleed. The officials are stunned as Mash uses his hands to block the creature's blade from reaching the doll. He's willing to outlast the creature, knowing it will disappear eventually. Wahlberg realizes that Mash is someone who can protect the weak and stand against the strong. He recalls the creature and turns on the lights, revealing that Mash was being tested all along. Wahlberg welcomes him to the East Magic Academy. Later, in class, the students learn a basic spell to open locks. The teacher demonstrates it, but Mash simply destroys the lock with his hands, frustrating the teacher. Mash explains that magic isn't really his thing, as if this school wasn't made for magic. The boy next to him, Finn, starts to see Mash as a troublemaker. After class, Finn searches for his dorm room, hoping he won't be rooming with Mash. But when he arrives, he finds the door is missing, and Mash is holding it in place, realizing they'll be sharing a room. As they get to know each other, Finn starts to think Mash is just a normal guy, but then Mash shows off his muscles, making Finn think he's a bit of a weirdo. Mash asks Finn if he can borrow his broom for the next class because he accidentally brought a giant plant root instead of a broom. Finn agrees, and the next day, during class, they're trained to fly on their brooms. Mash tries to ride his, but the broom won't respond to him, and a student mocks him for slowing the class down. Annoyed, Mash stomps his foot, making the broom fly into his hand. The student calls him a cheater, but the teacher announces a race to see who can fly the fastest. The loser will have to obey the winner until graduation. The student challenges Mash, and Mash accepts. The teacher doubts that Mash can even ride his broom, but the race starts, and Mash wins instantly, setting a new world record. No one even saw him move, thinking his magic is so advanced they couldn't keep up. Meanwhile, in reality, Mash just threw the broom forward and jumped onto it midair. The student accuses him of cheating, but he drops the bet, feeling sorry for Mash. The student keeps talking, but his mouth suddenly gets stitched shut when a student named Cavill enters the scene. Cavill apologizes for his friend, but everyone knows he's a troublemaker, so they worry that Mash has just become his next target. Cavill introduces himself, but Mash mishears his name as Cabbage, making everyone laugh awkwardly. Cavill prepares to cast the spell, but the teacher interrupts, and Cavill tells Mash to meet him after class. After class, Finn warns Mash that Cavill is the son of a high-ranking official at the Bureau of Magic. He explains that Cavill has connections with the vice principal, and if Mash messes with him, he could get expelled. Mash doesn't care much and spends his time baking cream puffs, while Cavill waits for him to show up. The next day, Mash's book is in bad condition, and Cavill approaches him, asking why he didn't show up. Mash explains that he was too busy baking, which annoys Cavill. Cavill offers Mash a deal. He'll help Mash become the divine visionary if Mash follows his orders. Mash agrees right away and becomes Cavill's lapdog, doing whatever he says. Cavil starts ordering Mash around, like making him clean up water that he pours on the floor. Then, he commands Finn to ruin Mash's books. When Finn refuses, Cavil uses magic to force him to obey. Later, Mash arrives and sees Cavil beating up Finn. Cavil says he just wants an apology from Finn, who confesses to ruining Mash's books under Cavil's orders. Cavil then asks Mash if he wants to have dinner with the vice principal, but Mash responds by slamming Cavil's head onto the floor, knocking him out cold. Finn warns Mash that he's in big trouble now. Just then, the vice principal, Farman, shows up. He reveals that Cavil's father asked him to look after his son. Farman saw everything and says Mash's actions were an attack on Cavil, so they'll hold a conference to discuss it. He also makes it clear that Cavil deserves special treatment because of his status. Mash, annoyed by Farman's attitude, rushes over and knocks Farman out with a punch. He explains that since Farman isn't open to reason, beating him up seemed like the best option. Farman tries to cast a spell, but Mash slaps dirt in his face and buries him in a hole. Farman threatens Mash with expulsion, but Mash threatens to bury him alive if he doesn't back off. After that, Mash is called to the headmaster's office, where he learns that the Bureau of Magic is considering expelling him. The Bureau is the highest authority in the land, and the Divine Visionaries are at the core of it. The headmaster reminds Mash about Cavil's status, but Mash burns the notice from the Bureau, not wanting to see good people pushed aside for the elites. The headmaster, Wahlberg, goes on a rant about how the world serves only the rich and powerful, and he thinks the world needs more people like Mash, people willing to sacrifice for what's right. He even wants Mash to become a divine visionary. Mash agrees to become one, and the headmaster tells him that to become a divine visionary, he just needs to earn high marks and collect as many coins as possible. Wahlberg says he'll take care of the bureau and the vice principal, and Mash leaves with a sense of relief. The next day, the captain of the Quidditch-like team, Tom, invites Mash to join. Mash insists that he can't ride a broom, but Tom doesn't believe him and drags him onto the team. During the match, the enemy grabs the ball and Mash is still on the ground, repeating that he can't ride a broom. But who's going to believe our fellow mans can't do something so simple? Mash stares blankly at the sky while taking part in the duelo competition. Tom approaches him and explains the rules. Magic is banned, so Mash has to rely on his broom skills. Things get worse when an opponent knocks Tom down, breaking his arm. They're losing badly, with the other team having a 40-point lead. Tom, despite the pain, tells Mash that no matter if they win or lose, he should give his all in the game. Mash, determined, uses his super strength to leap into the air and kicks his legs fast enough to stay airborne. His teammates are amazed as he starts scoring points like crazy, getting the team a score of 999 and leading them to victory. Afterward, Mash and his team win silver coins. The next day, a blue-haired student reads about Mash's amazing performance and marks Mash as someone to watch out for. Later, Tom tells Mash he should study with Lemon, but Mash isn't interested. He turns to Finn for help, but Finn's already asleep. Then, Lance Crown, the blue-haired student, shows up. He wants to join their conversation and suddenly traps Finn, Lemon, and Tom inside an ancient bottle. He tells Mash if he wants to free them, he must come to the forest next to the owl hut for a duel. Lance challenges Mash, betting 2 silver coins. Lance, a double-line magic user, explains that magic is forbidden in most duels, but he'll make an exception for this one. He mocks Mash, calling him too soft and saying he'll easily win. Meanwhile, in the forest, 2 other students, Regro and Brad, overhear Lance casting a gravity spell to help him win. The duel begins, and Lance tries to use his gravity magic to overpower Mash. But Mash surprises him with his strength, landing a punch that knocks Lance's locket to the ground. Inside the locket is a photo of a little girl. Mash accuses Lance of being a predator, but Lance explains that the girl is his sister, Anna. Mash, realizing the situation, returns the locket. Lance then reveals that he's been using the duel to try and save his sister, who is suffering from a disease that will take away her magic powers. Lance's father told him that if Anna loses her powers, the government will take her away. Lance wants to become a divine visionary to save her, which is why he's willing to do anything to win. As the duel continues, Lance dangles the bottle with Mash's friends over a cliff, hoping it will force Mash to fight harder. But Mash uses his hamstring magic to snatch the bottle away, saving his friends. Lance realizes that Mash has physical enhancement magic, but Mash tells him he knows Lance isn't a bad guy because the bottle didn't have Tom, Lemon, or Finn in it. Mash runs toward Lance, grabs the bottle, and tells him he doesn't want to fight anymore. Lance asks why Mash isn't taking the silver coins, and Mash admits he's too clumsy to make good decisions. Lance gives Mash a silver coin to honor the bet and leaves. Mash's friends thank him for saving them. At the academy, there are 3 rival dorms: Adler for courage, Orca for wisdom, and Lang for ambition. Mash has been collecting his silver coins, and he learns that 5 silver coins equal 1 gold coin. One day, he relaxes with Finn, but Finn suddenly panics. They forgot to do their potion assignment. Just then, Lance appears, calling them slackers and scolding them for not doing their work. He warns that their dorm's reputation is at risk. Mash, however, uses his necklace to make Lance look at a photo of his little sister, which knocks Lance out cold. With Lance out of the way, Mash decides to help Finn with the assignment. He shows them a mandrake, a plant they need for the potion. The trick is to put it to sleep, and Mash tries the spell first. But his mandrake goes wild instead. Lance steps in and gives Finn some advice, teaching him how to focus his magic. Finn succeeds in putting his mandrake to sleep, but Mashes goes on a rampage.
そういえばマッシュ君は
Oh my god.
Mash, unfazed, simply slaps it, knocking it out cold. Next, Lance shows them how to prepare the mandrake for the potion. Mash thinks it's easy since it doesn't require magic. But when he tries to follow Lance's steps, his potion turns into a cream puff. No matter how many times he tries, the same thing happens. But the cream puffs are surprisingly delicious, which confuses Lance even more. Meanwhile, Headmaster Wahlberg is worried about Mash as he prepares for the upcoming off-campus class. A student named Barrett bumps into a few others and beats them up, calling them side characters. At the Lang dorm, the students believe power is everything and think the Adler dorm is weak. Their leader orders them to take all the coins from Adler students. The next day, the Lang and Adler dorms have a joint class in the forest. Mash wonders what they'll be doing, and they soon notice Barrett, who's boasting about being the main character. Mash finds him weird, but Barrett calls Mash a side character, judging by his appearance. Lemon asks Mash if she can tag along, which annoys Barrett even more. When he spits on Mash, he gets even angrier, thinking people like him are the reason he can't get a girl. But Mash and his friends ignore him, making Barrett more frustrated. The professor arrives and explains the class. They're tasked with hunting forest scorpions and retrieving the stones from their heads. Regular stones are worth a bronze coin, but the stronger scorpions have a square stone worth a silver coin. The professor sends them off, and Mash aims to get a silver coin. Just then, a student named Silva, who saw Mash's duel, attacks him with a pillar of iron, claiming Mash isn't special. The professor stops them, and Lance warns Mash to stay away from Silva, who is older than them because he was held back for causing trouble. As they head into the forest, Lance suggests they work together, but Mash gets distracted and wanders off. He runs into Barrett again, who gets upset, but Mash simply slaps him. Then, they hear a scream. A girl is being attacked by another student. The girl is saved by Barrett, but he starts to panic when she thanks him and grabs his hand. Meanwhile, Silva has already defeated a scorpion and taken a square stone. The girl reveals she's being forced to use her magic by Silva, and Barrett promises to help her. Just then, Silva appears and attacks. Barrett decides to fight him to protect the girl. He launches fireballs, ending with a huge explosion. Meanwhile, Finn and Lemon are clinging to Lance, worried about Mash since Silva is targeting him. Barrett thinks he's won, but Silva protected himself with his iron. He knocks Mash's cream puff out of his hand and taunts them, daring them to fight. Barrett, worried about the difference in their magic, decides to take on the fight alone to save the girl. Silva offers a twisted deal. If Barrett can take 5 hits, he'll leave the girl alone. Silva even wagers a silver coin. The girl thinks this is insane, but Barrett agrees, determined to protect her. Silva insists that Mash is part of the deal, so Barrett says he'll take all 10 hits to protect Mash. Silva thinks Barrett is crazy and starts attacking with his Iron Fist spell. Barrett is slammed with the iron pillars, but he refuses to back down. After 9 hits, Barrett is on his knees, but still standing. Silva prepares the final blow, and Barrett takes it, collapsing afterward. Silva gloats, thinking he's won, but Barrett somehow gets back up, telling Silva it's over. But as he moves towards Silva, he collapses again, and Silva calls him an idiot. Barrett tells Mash to take the girl and run, but it turns out the girl is actually working with Silva. She calls Barrett cheesy and says she hates guys like him. Silva laughs, mocking Barrett for being easily tricked. But then Mash stuffs Silva's mouth with a cream puff. Mash feels like things have gone too far and decides to join the fight. He tells Silva he's ready for the 10-hit challenge and dares him to bring it on. Meanwhile, Mash's friends manage to take out a scorpion, but Lance worries about Mash. Lemon reassures him, saying Mash even beat the professor during their entrance exam. But Lance explains that there are different kinds of magic users. White mages focus on academics and support magic, while red mages are all about combat. Mash has only faced white mages so far, and Lance fears any red mage past their first year could easily defeat him. Silva thinks Mash is just pretending to be tough and says he hates weak people who act strong. He finds it fun to crush their spirits. He notices his robe is singed from Barrett's magic and prepares to attack again. Mash rushes at him, and although Silva counters, he gets pushed back. Silva laughs, bragging about how he earned 2 gold coins during his first year. He attacks Mash with his magic, but Mash catches the spell with his hand and crushes it. Mash gets ready to use his tricep magic, but Silva thinks he's just messing around. Silva keeps attacking with his iron pillars, but Mash dodges them and smashes right through them. He lands a punch on Silva, sending him flying. Silva starts bleeding, confused by Mash's strength. Silva launches a counterattack, but Mash smashes right through it again, landing another punch. Silva is brought to his knees, realizing he can't win. Silva knows he can't take any more hits, but Mash suddenly stops and sits down. Silva wonders what he's doing, and Mash tells him there are still 8 attacks to go. Silva, terrified, thinks he might die if he takes any more hits. He tries to come up with a plan when suddenly, a massive scorpion appears, with a star-shaped stone on its head. It's extra strong and valuable. Silva hopes he can escape while Mash is distracted, but Mash sends the scorpion flying with a single punch. The scorpion drops its star-shaped stone. Silva freaks out, calling Mash a monster. Mash decides to call off the fight, feeling sorry for Silva. He then turns his attention to the girl, who starts crying and claims she was forced to help Silva. Mash doesn't buy it, and she says that men like him are too easy to manipulate. Mash, believing in equality, slams her into the ground. Barrett thinks something's off with Mash. Later, Mash meets up with his friends. Lemon worries when she sees how beaten up he is, but Mash insists he's fine. Finn is impressed that Mash even defeated the Starstone Scorpion, which is worth 2 silver coins. Lemon wants Mash to go to the nurse's office, and she checks on Barrett too. Barrett, instantly charmed by her, starts freaking out, but she just thinks he's weird. Barrett apologizes to Mash for dragging him into the mess and thanks him for his help. Mash thinks he's acting strange, so Barrett threatens to beat him up, saying he's only being nice because it was hard for him. Mash's pocket suddenly glows, and his silver coins combine to form a gold coin. Lance warns them that they're being targeted because the Langdorm wants their coins. He explains that the Langdorm values bloodlines and birthright, and they don't want people like Mash joining the Bureau of Magic. He warns them to watch out for the Magia Lupus, a group of elite Langdorm students. Mash says he didn't even know the dorms were divided, and Finn reminds him about the sorting ceremony. When they were accepted into the academy, students were sorted by the skeleton of a unicorn. The skeleton reads their minds to sort them, but when it tried to sort Mash, it only found thoughts of cream puffs. The skeleton panicked, having never struggled to sort anyone before, and eventually decided Mash belonged in Adler since he loved cream puffs. Lance continues to explain that Magia Lupus consists of the top 7 students from Langdorm, and Silva was likely just one of their lackeys. He warns Mash to be extra careful now that he has a gold coin and tells him to stick with people from their dorm. But despite the warning, Mash soon gets lost while looking for his class. He finds a door, wondering if it's a push or pull, and tries to open it. Meanwhile, Silva, apologizing for his failure, reports to the Langdorm's leader, Abel. Abel, holding a creepy-looking doll, talks about cleansing the world of impurities. Silva begs for another chance, but Abel calls him unworthy to even be a pawn and turns him into a doll. The doll gets up and joins a line of others. Abel claims he is the only one worthy to become the next divine visionary. While he talks to the doll, which he calls Mother, Mash suddenly enters. Apologizing for breaking the door, he points out that Abel is weird for talking to a doll. Abel knows Mash has a gold coin and asks why he wants to be a divine visionary. Mash says he just wants to live peacefully with his family, but the world won't accept him. Abel laughs at this, calling it ridiculous. He explains that he wants to return the world to its rightful state, where the strong thrive and the weak are cast aside. He believes that humans are beasts by nature and society has become too weak. Mash doesn't understand and just wants peace. Abel offers Mash a deal, his freedom in exchange for the gold coin. But Mash refuses. Abel attacks with a puppet, but Mash dodges and destroys it, turning it back into Silva. Suddenly, another puppet grabs Mash and snatches his coin, flicking it to Abel. Mash is thrown into a pillar, but he gets up and apologizes for calling the puppet weak, deciding to take Silva to the infirmary. Abel wonders if Mash has given up on his coin, but Mash says he's just prioritizing. Mash leaves with Silva, but Abel notices something strange. He finds a missing button from his puppet in his hand instead of Mash's coin. It turns out, Mash had ripped the button off the puppet, spitting it out at incredible speed, hitting the coin midair and pulling it back to himself. Abel finds Mash interesting, and one of the students is amazed at what just happened. At the infirmary, Silva wakes up, confused about what happened after he was turned into a puppet. He realizes Mash must have saved him. Mash decides to leave, and Silva reflects on his actions. Meanwhile, in Mash's dorm room, Lance and Barrett are arguing. Finn wonders what's going on, but Barrett, frustrated with Lance's good looks and easy life, challenges him to a fight. Before they can start, Mash enters, enjoying a cream puff, asking them not to break anything. Just then, Lemon bursts in with big news. The Lang dorm is in the lead with 15 gold coins, while Adler and Orca dorms only have 1 each. At this rate, Lang will get the next divine visionary. The Orca dorm is too focused on research, so it's up to Mash and his friends to stop Lang. They get fired up, ready to crush the Lang students. However, Mash ends up being punished by the headmaster and forced to clean the owl hut for a week. The owls peck at him while he thinks about how they were just getting motivated. Lance decides to join him, worried that Lang students might target Mash because of his coin. Meanwhile, 2 Lang students, Andrew and Shinri, approach, ready to take Mash's coin. As Mash struggles with the pecking owls, water suddenly appears beneath him, and he falls in, while Lance dodges a giant spinning blade. Andrew transforms into a shark, going after Mash, while Shinri faces off against Lance. Shinri's attacks are powerful, but Lance dodges and tries to use his gravity magic. However, the owls distract him and he gets hit. He finally uses his gravity magic, but it only makes a shovel fall to the ground. Shinri is unimpressed and gets ready to finish him off, but Lance uses his gravity spell to crush all the blades and save himself. Shinri is shocked by the difference in power between them, but Lance explains that he fights to protect his sister while Shinri fights to feel superior. Meanwhile, Andrew traps Mash in his sea field, thinking Mash can't escape. but Mash surprises him by swimming at an incredible speed.
気のせいですね今のは。今何かがものすごい勢いで横切ったような。
Andrew tries to use his monstrous form to attack, but Mash just keeps swimming around him, landing blow after blow. Andrew can't handle it, and Mash escapes the sea field. Lance takes their coin, but just as they're feeling victorious, another member of the Magia Lupus appears. This new opponent quickly gets past them, and Lance's gravity spell doesn't work on him. Mash charges with all his speed, but the man dodges effortlessly. Lance realizes the man might be using teleportation magic. The man then collects his allies with a magic bottle, saying goodbye. As he walks away, his mask cracks, and he reflects on Mash's speed, wondering if they are similar. Lance realizes that defeating the Magia Lupus won't be as easy as they thought. That night, the mysterious man confronts a student from another dorm, demanding his gold coin. The student attacks with magma magic, but the man remains completely unfazed and easily defeats him. He's disappointed the fight ended so quickly. The next day, Lance is planning how to deal with the Magi Al Lupus, a dangerous group. Since the locations of the Lang dorm are hidden, he suggests they find it and go on the attack to take their coins. But Mash is too busy making cream puffs to care. Lance gives him a new robe with the Adler dorm's logo on the back, hoping it'll remind Mash where he belongs. Suddenly, Lemon bursts in with bad news. Something happened to Tom. They find him in the infirmary, looking drained. Tom doesn't remember how he got there but shares that he's been feeling off ever since he had a dream where he was trapped in a dark box, unable to move. He's also temporarily lost his magic power. Lemon worries about him, and Mash promises to be careful, especially after she gives him a cream puff charm as a lucky token. She asks him to keep it with him, hoping it'll remind him of her. Later that night, Lance, Mash, Barrett, and Finn are wandering the school, searching for the Lang dorm. Barrett is in it for the coins, and Finn just doesn't want to be left alone. As they explore, they come across Lemon, but something seems off. Lemon's body twists unnaturally. She's been turned into a puppet. The group avoids her gaze as she continues walking, and Barrett still finds her cute, even in her puppet form. They try to follow her, but they hit a dead end. Finn hears something crackling, and Lance uses a spell to reveal a hidden door. They try to open it, but Barrett's fireballs don't even scratch it. Mash, being Mash, grabs a suit of armor, throws it down next to the door, and uses it to pry it open. When he steps on it, the door flies out, creating a huge hole in the roof. Lance realizes they're probably walking straight into the Magi Al Lupus trap, and Mash glances at his lucky charm, wondering how he can keep his promise to Lemon while facing this danger. The group enters, only to find a hidden space beneath the school. They walk through a tunnel and emerge into an arena. A student named Giruku appears, saying they need to defeat him to continue. Lance steps forward, ready to fight, but Barrett decides to take over, having a grudge against good-looking guys. Barrett rants about how easy Giruku's life must be, but Giruku responds by transforming his wand into a rose whip, preparing for battle. Meanwhile, at the Bureau of Magic, Headmaster Wahlberg is talking to the director, learning that 6 of the most notorious criminals have escaped prison with help from someone known as Innocent Zero. The situation is serious. Back in the arena, Barrett attacks with fireballs, but Giruku's vines stop them. The vines lash out, and Barrett barely dodges. Undeterred, Barrett attacks again, but this time the fireballs miss and leave marks around Giruku. Barrett confidently says Giruku will fall for his trap. Giruku, however, doesn't believe him. As Barrett tries to move Giruku into position, the rose whip grabs him and stabs him with thorns. Giruku thinks the fight is over, but Barrett surprises him by activating a hidden time bomb on one of the marks. The explosion destroys Giruku's wand, and Barrett reveals that he never said anything about stepping on the marks. Giruku can't believe he lost to Barrett, who's now excited for his next challenge. Suddenly, the ground beneath them begins to sink. Mash tries to protect his cream puff as they all fall through the floor, landing in separate areas. Lance is confronted by Mal, the 3rd Fang of the Magi Al Lupus, and Barrett and Finn meet Milo and Love, the 4th and 5th Fangs. Finn is worried, but Barrett encourages him, saying they still have a chance. Mash lands in a dark room, confused about where his friends went. The room lights up, and he's greeted by the masked man from before, who introduces himself as Razor, the 2nd Fang of the Magi Al Lupus. Razor compliments Mash's movements from their last meeting but reveals he knows Mash's secret. He can't use magic. Mash gets nervous, realizing that someone has figured him out. Maddle explains that in their world, strength is everything, and the weak are useless. Lance, however, isn't interested in his philosophy and immediately attacks using his gravity magic. But Maddle turns into mud and seeps into the ground, only to reappear behind Lance with a bunch of clones. Lance defends himself by squashing the clones back into mud, but Maddle just laughs, saying it's pointless because the mud reforms. Lance realizes he needs to attack the real Maddle to stop the clones, so he decides to use his magic to hit the entire field. But once again, Maddle reappears behind him, trapping him in mud and launching hardened mud balls at him. Maddle tells Lance he's wasting his talent and invites him to join the Magi Lupus, saying he'll only sink to the level of Adler Dorm's weaklings if he stays. He brags about the Magi Lupus' superior education, tools, and potions. Lance scoffs at all of it, saying his strength doesn't depend on his environment and calling Maddle inferior. Lance attacks again, sending Maddle flying into the wall, but Maddle uses his magic to absorb the impact with more mud. Maddle thinks he's unbeatable, as gravity magic depends on slamming the opponent into the ground. But Lance switches tactics, using rocks instead of gravity magic, forcing Maddle to show himself. Maddle, now cornered, reveals a magical potion he took from the students, which boosts his power. He drinks it, and his power surges. He then activates an advanced form of his magic called Secondy, summoning a giant demon-like mud monster. He explains that Secondy can only be used by those with double magic lines, like him, and that Lance will never be as strong because he's surrounded by failures. But Lance surprises him by activating his own Secondy magic, creating gravity pillars that trap the monster from all sides. The monster is torn apart, and Maddle can't believe he lost. Flashbacks of his past with his father play in his mind, reminding him that no matter how strong he became, his father would never acknowledge him. Maddle feels worthless, but Lance, showing some compassion, throws Maddle his worn book and says it's clear he's worked hard to get where he is. Lance talks about his own family's obsession with position and status, but reflects on how his sister just wanted to follow her dream. Lance doesn't agree with Maddle's way of thinking, but he respects his effort and leaves to find his friends. Meanwhile, Mash is worried because Razor might have figured out his secret. Razor believes they are similar, both rejected by the world, but he has his own reasons for being here. The two prepare to fight. Mash changes into his workout gear and charges at Razor, delivering a powerful kick that pushes him back. But Razor instantly dashes past him, slashing him as he goes. He reveals his magic boosts his speed, and he lands hit after hit, saying that they're on different levels. Mash refuses to give up, but Razor tells him his dream of living peacefully with his family is disgusting, claiming that Mash was lucky to have the people around him. Razor threatens Mash, revealing that Lemon is being drained of her magic power, and if it continues for 30 more minutes, she'll lose it all, just like him. Mash swears to beat Razor. Razor steps up his attack, slashing Mash repeatedly. Mash tries to defend, but gets stabbed in the stomach. Razor's sword gets stuck, and Mash headbutts him, cracking his mask and revealing Razor's face. Razor's red eye is revealed to be the evil eye, which can disable magic. He explains that it's seen as a cursed power, causing everyone, even his family, to fear and reject him. Mash apologizes, but his evil eye doesn't work on him, which puzzles Razor. Razor explains that his evil eye is a curse, making him an outcast, but Mash doesn't understand. Then, Razor activates his Secondy magic and traps Mash in a field that drains his speed and transfers it to Razor. Mash tries to defend himself, but it seems hopeless. However, Mash suddenly smashes the ground, splitting the floor and limiting Razor's movements. Razor realizes what Mash did, but Mash steps on his foot, stopping him from escaping. Mash then uses his muscle magic, delivering a powerful punch that blows Razor out of the field, breaking his spell. Mash chases Razor, kicking him in the back. Razor, desperate, tries to fight back, but Mash catches his sword and slams him into the wall. Mash keeps overpowering him, finally finishing him off with a submission hold. As Razor lies defeated, he reflects on his painful past. His evil eye manifested when he was a child, and his parents locked him away, even trying to kill him. He grew up believing he should never have been born. When he met Abel, he felt like he had a purpose, even if it meant being used as a tool. But now, having failed, he feels like he's back to being unwanted. Mash, seeing how lucky he is to have a supportive father, offers to be Razor's friend. But Razor dismisses it, thinking Mash will eventually change his mind about him. Still, as a final act of kindness, Razor warns Mash not to fight Abel, saying he's on a completely different level. Mash thanks him for the warning but refuses to give up. He says that no matter what others think, his feelings won't change, and he invites Razor to share cream puffs the next time they meet. Barrett and Finn are up against Milo and Love, but just as they prepare for the battle, another student finds the sea door and is ready to head inside. Love thinks Barrett and Finn will be easy targets since they're only single-line fighters. Milo decides to leave and go after Mash, telling Love to handle things on her own. Love immediately asks Barrett and Finn if they like her, but they find her questions strange since they don't even know her. Undeterred, she asks if they think she's cute instead. Barrett, while sensing that she's trying to manipulate them, admits she is his type but claims he's already engaged to Lemon, so he can't be with her. Love, furious, tells him to die, claiming that all women are queens and any man who can't praise them doesn't deserve to live. Barrett thinks she's being too extreme, but Love insists once more, asking if they like her. Barrett repeats that he already has Lemon, and Finn feels like they've had this conversation before. Suddenly, Love attacks, hitting Barrett with a powerful tornado that blows him away. She tells him that her father taught her she can kill anyone who doesn't cheer her, but Barrett refuses to back down and throws fireballs at her. However, Love easily dodges, mocking his weak magic. But Barrett's fireballs land just short, creating a smoke screen. Barrett tries to grab a wand, but Love blows him away again. She reveals that Milo's power turns a specific target to stone, and if they don't stop her, Mash will be turned to stone in 30 minutes. Love traps Barrett in a tornado cage, telling him there's no way out. Barrett struggles but has a flashback to his childhood, where he remembers being picked on by other kids, only for his sister to stand up for him. She tells him that he needs to fight back, or he'll lose any friends who care about him. Barrett realizes that Mash stood up for him too, and he refuses to let Love mock his friend. As Love goes to attack Finn, Barrett breaks free from her cage and cancels her tornado attack with ease. Surprised by his newfound power, Love wonders what changed, but Barrett confidently tells her it's a crime to insult his friends. He surrounds her with fireballs and declares himself the main character. But when the smoke clears, Barrett intentionally misses and tells Love to just leave. Just then, a stone head appears behind Finn, and Barrett quickly pushes him out of the way, blocking the attack. Milo returns, surprised by the turn of events. Love, apologizing for losing, is happy that Milo gave up on turning Mash to stone. But Milo prepares to crush them, his stone hands reaching out. Just as it seems they're done for, a sword pierces through the air and strikes Milo, sending him flying. Finn recognizes the sword, and Milo, stunned, realizes he's up against a former divine visionary, Rain, Finn's older brother and the ace of the Alder dorm. Milo tries to fight back, but Rain effortlessly destroys his stone head and attacks with his swords, overwhelming him. As the dust settles, Milo begs for his life, and Barrett wonders if they're really on the same side as Rain. Rain tells Barrett and Finn to leave, saying he'll take care of the rest. Love quickly flees, and after interrogating Milo, Rain heads deeper into the dungeon. He was sent by Headmaster Wahlberg, who had a lead on Innocent Zero and thought their pawn might be nearby. Rain feels the magic in the area might be hidden, but just then, he runs into Mash, casually eating a cream puff. Rain senses something strange about Mash and wonders if he's one of Innocent Zero's pawns. He summons a spider to test Mash's magic power, but the spider detects nothing. Mash has zero magic. Rain attacks, but Mash effortlessly catches his sword and turns it into a chair. Rain is confused but realizes Mash might be the new student Wahlberg mentioned. He apologizes for attacking, but Mash doesn't accept it. Rain feels bad and gives Mash a magic handkerchief that can heal wounds, but Mash, thinking Rain likes rabbits, thanks him for the gift. Rain then warns Mash about Abel, saying that as a student with no magic, he might struggle against Abel's powerful doll magic. Mash, however, insists he has magic. Rain wishes him luck and says he has other things to do, but he adds that he's supporting Mash because Wahlberg told him how much Mash values his friends and how he even saved his brother. Rain is rooting for him to achieve his goal of becoming a divine visionary. Mash soon finds the final door to the dungeon, unsure if it's a push or pull. He guesses correctly, but thinking of Lemon, he ends up blasting the door open. Abel is surprised he was able to defeat Razor, thinking that only Rain should be strong enough to face Razor's evil eye. He begins to think that he might be on the same level as a divine visionary. However, Mash worries that Abel might have figured out his secret, but Abel simply believes Mash is strong and calls him a fellow superior being. Abel then shares his dark view that the weak have been taking advantage of the kind and powerful people like him, growing stronger and demanding more rights, which makes everyone weaker. He wants to get rid of them all. Mash wonders if Abel is talking about people who can't use magic, and Abel confirms that those people, as well as underachievers and anyone who helps them, should be disposed of. Mash thinks back to how Brad took him in, teaching him to do a backflip when he was young, and how Burnedead always told him how proud he was to have him as his son. Mash realizes that he can't be friends with someone like Abel. Meanwhile, Love is relieved to escape from Rain but is shocked to find the door to Abel's room broken and sees Mash fighting against Abel. Mash crushes one of Abel's puppets, but acid pours out, and Abel warns him to be more careful. However, Mash picks up the destroyed puppet's head and throws it, knocking over all the acid puppets in one go. Love can't believe her eyes. Mash asks Abel if he would consider himself inferior if he loses and demands that Abel let Lemon go if he wins. Abel, impressed that Mash isn't just talking, uses his strongest puppet, which is Mash himself. Mash struggles as the strings attached to his body start choking him, but suddenly, the strings break. Abel apologizes for using such a rough technique and brings out Finn, whom he has turned into a puppet. Abel notes he also captured Barrett, but Finn will serve as the entertainment. Finn attacks, but Mash blocks the hit. Abel warns Mash not to block, or he will tear Finn apart. Mash takes a beating, but Finn's axe breaks, and Mash remains unfazed. He takes out his gold coin, and Abel wonders if Mash is finally ready to give it up. Instead, Mash flicks the coin at Abel, cutting the strings controlling Finn and transforming him back into a human. The coin returns to Mash, who jokingly says it must like him more. Abel then decides to stop playing around and uses his magic to control Mash again, claiming it's impossible for Mash to resist. Mash struggles but says he'll make Abel regret messing with his friends. He manages to break one of Abel's fingers and prepares to fight back. As Mash breaks free, he punches Abel in the face, but Abel uses his magic and Mash begins to turn into a puppet. Abel is impressed that Mash forced him to use this spell, but Mash is fully transformed. Abel tries to take Mash's coin, but it turns out to be a cream puff, leaving Abel confused. Suddenly, Mash punches Abel, and he transforms back into his human form, relieved that his cream puff is still safe. Abel wonders how Mash moved as a puppet since his magic blocks brain signals, but he realizes that Mash's reflexes must have kicked in when his cream puff was threatened. Love, still shocked, can't believe how important the cream puff was to Mash. Abel, acknowledging Mash's strength, activates his second magic, summoning a giant puppet. This puppet has the power to turn anyone within a 100-meter radius into a puppet. The strings begin to descend, and Abel declares that Mash should be grateful that he made him use his ultimate skill. But to everyone's surprise, Mash isn't affected. He reveals that he simply tore the strings. Love is amazed, and Abel is stunned. Mash had moved in such a way that the strings touched different parts of his body at different times, allowing him to tear them apart. Abel, completely shocked, attacks with his puppet again, but Mash destroys it and knocks Abel into the ground. Abel's mind flashes back to his mother, a kind noblewoman who believed in treating everyone equally. She would share food with the poor, but one greedy man stabbed her when she resisted. This loss made Abel believe that the weak needed to be purged. He gathered talented people who shared his views, believing that the strong should take from the weak. But Mash disagrees, saying that bad people exist no matter their social standing. Mash, having won the fight, asks Abel for Lemon's location, and Abel reluctantly agrees to release all the students. Mash catches Lemon, and Finn wakes up, both of them grateful to Mash for saving them. They all celebrate together, with Finn in tears, thanking Mash, and Lemon apologizing for getting him involved. Abel, defeated, is left stunned by his loss. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, Lance encounters Rain, and to Rain's surprise, Lance manages to block his attack. Rain's spider reveals that Lance's power is off the charts. But it turns out that Lance isn't really Lance, he's one of Innocent Zero's associates. The imposter wonders how Rain saw through his disguise. But Rain just attacks first and asks questions later. He presses the imposter about Innocent Zero's goals, and the man reveals they were searching for something, and since Abel was no help, they now plan to kill him. The imposter goes off to find Abel, and Rain goes after him. But a giant knife stops him. Rain realizes that the man heading toward Mash and his friends has power on the level of a divine visionary, and he worries for their safety. Burnedead and Brad are chatting about how Mash is doing at the academy, hoping he hasn't been exposed for not having magic. Burnedead wonders why Brad doesn't need to work, and Brad casually says he's just here to get some screen time. Meanwhile, Mash and his friends are still celebrating their victory, while Abel is getting frustrated by how much time they're wasting. Mash excuses himself to use the bathroom, and his friends are just happy everything's over. The other students who had been turned into puppets are back to normal, but suddenly, some criminals rise up. They wonder who the stranger is, but the man quickly blows them away. Barrett thinks about fighting him, but he can instantly tell how strong the man is. The stranger approaches Abel and introduces himself as Cell. He mocks Abel for losing and calls him pathetic for not reaching the top of the school. Cell thanks Abel for the information on the headmaster and then uses his magic to control Abel's hands, making him choke himself. Abel is about to die when Mash returns with a plate of cream puffs, ready to continue the celebration. His friends tell him it's not the right time, and then a fly lands on Mash's nose, causing him to sneeze and throw the cream puffs at Cell. His friends wonder if it was a coincidence, but it allows Abel to break free. Mash asks for his cream puffs back, and his friends can't believe that's all he's thinking about. Cell throws the cream puffs to the ground, which shocks Mash. Cell suddenly feels a pain in his head and wonders if Mash is the one he's been looking for. Deciding to finish what he started, Cell lifts Abel into the air. Mash tries to save him, but Razor appears just in time to protect Abel. Mash rushes over, and Razor apologizes, saying he won't be able to share a cream puff with Mash this time. Mash gives him his magic handkerchief back, and Cell is surprised that his attack wasn't fatal. He realizes that just before he cast his spell, Mash threw a rock at him, which changed the direction of the spell. Mash stands his ground, smashing the ground and kicking a rock at Cell. Everyone is shocked when Cell catches the rock and starts licking it. But Mash just thinks he's weird for doing that. Cell warns Mash that Razor has only 30 minutes before it's too late and wonders what Mash can do. He starts attacking with his magic, but Mash blocks it with his fists. Cell thinks Mash is just talk, so he combines his magic into an even stronger attack, hitting Mash. Abel thinks Mash can't win, as there's too much of a gap between them. He remembers how his mother used to say that their privilege was just a coincidence, and he thinks Cell is just superior to them. Cell continues launching attacks, but Mash keeps blocking them. Abel thinks Razor was a fool for saving him, but Mash says Razor was happy. He explains that Razor was always alone and that Abel gave him a reason to live. Mash says he would feel the same if he were in Razor's shoes. Abel starts to remember his mother's advice to put himself in someone else's shoes to understand them better. Mash keeps fighting, thinking about how Razor had always wished he'd never been born. But when he met Abel, he finally found a reason to live. He tells Abel to get away while he can. Abel, moved, watches as Mash defends himself. But Cell, getting bored, starts attacking with even larger projectiles. Things seem grim for Mash, but suddenly, Abel's doll steps in to protect him. Abel sends his doll to attack, but Cell crushes it with ease. He tells Abel he doesn't stand a chance, but then one of the doll's heads moves, revealing that Mash was hiding inside. Mash then smashes Cell in the face. Cell is surprised Mash could damage his armor but doesn't care. He takes out a mirror and explains it's the Spellflexion Mirror, a magic item that can reflect any magic, one of the most feared items among magic users. Barrett warns Mash, but Cell tells Mash to do his worst, claiming he'll be crushed by his own magic. Mash smashes through the mirror, shocking everyone, who realize that Mash's power isn't magical. They remember past feats, thinking Mash must be something out of a fairy tale. Cell, unbothered, starts to notice a mark forming on his hand, confirming that Mash is the one he's been searching for. Suddenly, the room shatters and two giant hands appear. Cell claims he has an urgent errand to run and tells Mash he'll see him again soon before disappearing. Mash is relieved that it's over. Abel takes Razor to the infirmary, and Razor hopes to share a cream puff with Mash the next time they meet. Abel thanks Mash and promises to return the favor someday. Mash's friends join him, still in disbelief that he has no magic. They worry that Mash will get in trouble if anyone finds out, and Mash nervously insists that he can totally use magic. His friends agree to help keep his secret, but then one of the other students wakes up and overhears everything. He thinks it's ridiculous that someone with no magic is at the academy and plans to tell everyone about Mash. Mash realizes his secret is in danger and his friends wonder what he'll do. But Mash decides it's the perfect time to enjoy a cream puff. A few days after this fight, Mash was still giddy that they'd won, suggesting that he and his friends should celebrate their victory. Finn, however, couldn't shake off the moment when that loser threatened to snitch on Mash, even though they eventually pacified him and convinced him that Mash can use magic. While Finn addressed his fears to Mash, a certain Banana Cut student showed up and asked Mash about his inability to use magic, which turned Mash into a broken record, before Finn could take him outside. Despite that, Banana Cut insisted that this is a big deal, as the rumor is now spreading across the school like wildfire. To add insult to injury, Banana Cut decided to confirm the info with Finn, by reminding him that protecting a non-magic user could cost him his life at worst. Despite that, Finn not only refused to answer, but managed to gather a bit too much courage to wreck Banana Cut down, or so he thought, since that was the work of Lance, who got offended by his audacity. This wasn't the end of it, as both Lemon and Dot came in defense of Mash, even though Dot's injuries turned out to be a lot more severe than they thought. Once the school day was over, our dudes and dudette all gathered to celebrate their victory, supposedly that is, as Finn was scared to death from the intense looks that Razor and Abel were giving, before the latter of the two pulled out a deck of cards to play some games. Before Finn could breathe a sigh of relief, Razor made it clear that he's going to eliminate anyone that dares to beat his boss in a card game, before starting to shake from shyness after Lemon decided to serve him some tea. Seeing that his friend is in no good shape, Abel stepped in his defense, while Love began to consume every bit of sweets that came her way, much to Dot's frustration. On the other hand, Lemon tried to riz Mash in her own way by feeding him, to which Mash, being Mash, decided to eat on his own. Seeing that his favorite puff was falling off Lemon's spoon, Mash sucked it up with the sheer power of inhaling it, much to Lemon's surprise and Lance's frustration. For the latter, Finn came in to ask him about his whereabouts to the basement, only for Lance to claim that he ended up fighting some death row students there, before abruptly retreating. Although he was surprised by this, Finn was more surprised to see Abel and Razor playing card games on their own. Once this mayhem was over, Razor decided to thank Mash by warning him that he's being targeted by Innocent Zero. Razor also revealed that the worst criminal syndicate in the magical realm is after all the most gifted mages in the academy, who decided to give Abel his powers back in exchange for his help. Although Abel worked with them for the greater good, according to Razor that is, Innocent Zero kept on targeting anyone that has any sort of connection with Mash, which is why he needs to keep his guards up. As for Razor and Abel, they will get some sort of punishment for their loss. Aware that Abel was drifting from his raison d'etre to create a better world for people like his mother, Razor thanked Mash for getting his friend back on the right path. Hearing this, Mash agreed to work hand in hand with them both. Elsewhere, a certain Banana Cut has been trying to get any glimpse on Mash's dirty little secret, only for him to be shocked by Mash being around members of the Abyss. If that wasn't enough, Abel caught him eavesdropping on them red-handed. Terrified by his presence, Banana Cut fled the scene immediately. It wasn't just Banana Cut that got a panic attack at that time, as Razor went through the same dilemma when Lemon merely spoke to him. That was the case until an owl broke through the room's window, carrying a letter for Mash to read, and its content left the trio in utter shock. The next day, Mash was summoned to the Bureau of Magic, where an emergency inquiry about Mash's concealment of magic will be held. While he was getting insulted by Minister Bless, Roy Grants came in his defense, claiming that the means does not make a difference as long as success has been established. Rhodes also turned to Mash, informing him that he had the potential to become a Gigachad. Despite that, Roy pointed out that the rules must be upheld even if he was on the minority side. As such, he gave Mash a test, which is to light a candle without touching it. Minister saw that Mash has no chance of success. However, he was left in disbelief when Mash began rubbing his wand against the ground, thus starting a fire tornado and lighting up the candle, before making it clear for Roy that he's going to sway the majority with his fist, further impressing Royder. Elsewhere, one narration witnessed the arrival of the 4 divine visionaries, who were on their way to bring justice upon Mash themselves. While Mash was getting scolded still after getting pardoned by Ryo, the 4 arrived, with their leader Orter starting by attacking Mash, much to Minister's surprise, followed up by Renautus, Sarara, Caldo, Tyrone, I kid you not, that's his name, and Sofina. These bunch were firm believers that they do stand above everyone else in the academy, and that they shall never compromise with anyone that dares to break the rules, let alone a non-mage. Just as they stated their intentions to get rid of Mash, Innocent Zero possessed Minister, who started arguing how much his organization wants to capture Mash. To prove their seriousness, they revealed that they're using a magiparasite to control Minister's body, much to Sean's surprise. I'm not sure how he got to court, but that's off topic. Hearing their declaration of war against the Academy, Ryo decided to step in to root the magiparasite, despite that being a notoriously dangerous task. While he kept on arguing with Sean over whether he should do it or not, they realized that Mash heeded none of their warnings and rooted the parasite anyway. To their surprise, Mash ended up tying it into a giraffe balloon, after vomiting it. After putting Minister in a position where he could recover, Mash decided to leave the room. Although Rio became more impressed by this show of force, the Divine Visionaries remained fixated on bringing their judgment on Mash. Seeing that he doesn't want to go with them, Order decided to deal with him there and then. Just as he was about to finish off Mash, Rio stepped in to stop him, claiming that the Divine Visionaries hadn't heard about his take on the issue yet, insisting, like your average German officer, that regulations should also be kept no matter what. Order decided to step up his game and reach a new low, by claiming that Rio's opinion is irrelevant. Amidst this argument, a massive sword that Mash recognized was thrown into the court, signaling the arrival of Wahlberg and Rain's arrival. In fact, Wahlberg was more interested in defeating Innocent Zero, and believed that sparing him will give the Academy a hint to locate Innocent Zero and defeat them. Since he was the former Divine Visionary, Wahlberg has always been held in high regard. Despite that, Order still refused, repeating that same old broken record of his. Hearing this, Wahlberg went as far as to bow down, begging Order to reconsider his decision, as he added that the mistreatment that Lack Magics were having were partially his responsibility, and now he wants these errors to be redeemed. Before Order could finish his same broken AI-generated answer, Rain went on his knees in support of Wahlberg, claiming that Mash had proven that he's trustworthy time and time again. With the entirety of Order goons now standing by their leader's side and repeating that lame old rhetoric of theirs, Minister decided to step in, this time on Mash's side, since his life was saved by this Lack Magic who he was about to order his execution before their arrival. Heck, he even went as far as to put his position as a minister on the line for that. Being under that much pressure, Porter decided to spare Mash under several conditions. Mash will act under their supervision from this point on. He also must prove to be strong enough to defeat Innocent Zero. Fulfilling these conditions won't just save his life, but will also ensure him a position among the Divine Visionaries. Hearing this, Mash agreed to these conditions, promising Wahlberg that he'll ultimately defeat Innocent Zero with his fist, thus marking his own war with Innocent Zero. Back at the dormitory, Mash told his friends about what happened during his trial, including its outcome. As such, Dot decided that they join Mash in his fight against Innocent Zero. A while later, they went downtown to get some new clothes. Finn couldn't help but think about what Lance and Dot meant with what they said about the topic from earlier. Dot came back with an armor plate, followed up with Mash in his gym bro mode because this was his very first time going outside with friends. Just like your hardcore gym bro. As Lance arrived, Finn was hoping that he'd be the reasonable guy of the bunch, only for Lance to reveal that he was wearing his sister's merch underneath his jacket. Seeing this, Finn began to believe that he's out with an utter freak show. Aside from that, the squad stopped by a famous game in town, where they had to make some koalas sneeze darts. Mash got excited to give it a go, only to end up making the koala sneeze at Dot, a poetic justice for mocking him for being a novice in this game. One thing led to the other, and both Mash and Dot ended up wrestling each other. Once the two were done with their idiocy, everyone there accompanied Lance, who was after getting a new wand. After all, the Divine Visionary exam is drawing near, and Lance wants to pass it with flying colors. He was also sure that thanks to their financial situation, the four of them will pass the selection phase. However, since he has a huge sister complex, Lance wasn't willing to go easy on his friends before his foes, including Mash. Before they knew it, they reached the wand's shop. After entering it and having a word with the shopkeeper, Finn went ahead and used his magic to find a fitting wand for himself. Lance followed suit, as he managed to use his magic to pick the most impressive wand in the shop. When the shopkeeper approached Mash, however, Finn began to worry that Mash would be exposed for his inability to use magic. In case the first part of this sentence led you astray, this is a family-friendly channel. To his surprise, Mash stepped in to pick a wand too entrenched on the floor to be moved.
何ですかあの杖一つ怖
何をするつもり
So much so that it became as legendary as King Arthur's sword. Hearing that no amount of muscles or magic could budge this wand, Mash moved towards it and lifted it up like it was nothing, thus getting thanked by the speechless shopkeeper. A while later, the boys were joined by Lemon and Tom, who had just finished taking care of their chores. With everyone finally being in town, they decided to have fun doing anything they wanted. By the end of the day, everyone was ecstatic about living the student life they've always been looking for. However, they were taken aback when they heard that Mash was thankful to them for this fun time, since this was the very first time in his life he ever hung around with friends, hoping that they would do that again in the foreseeable future. A few days later, Lance was relieved to see that he and the goons were financially ready to get past the selection phase. Mash, on the other hand, had more important things to deal with. In fact, he met with Rain last night and asked him for permission to see his old man. As for Orter, he learned that Mash wants to participate in the exam, which didn't come to his liking. As such, he requested from Marguerite Macron to prevent him from doing so, informing him that Mash managed to defeat Abel without magic. This took Macron by surprise, to the point where he began to play on the piano, leaving his two subordinates, Tron and Cello, creeped out by his look. Back to Mash, he managed to make it back home to see his old man, who still had Brad by his side. The old man was delighted when he saw that not only Mash had arrived, but with him making friends as well, since it was because of him that Mash couldn't make friends before. Hearing this, Dot and Lemon decided to introduce themselves as Mash's rival and future wife respectively. Although Lemon had to clarify that she's not his fiancée yet, Finn thought it'd be best to assure the old man that Mash was doing well at school. Lance, on the other hand, after seeing that Dot gifted some herbs for Mash's old man, decided to give him his younger sister's merch, which creeped the old man out for a moment. Just like Finn, he was aware that they're all giving the former a hard time. Nevertheless, the old man was glad that Mash is making a healthy friendship with all of them, and hoped that it'll last forever. While the bunch were having fun, they remained oblivious that Macaron and his men were in hot pursuit after Mash, when suddenly he got stopped by Rain. Aware of how powerful his opponent was, Macaroni became too excited that he began to play on his piano. Seeing that Rain was not impressed at all, Macaroni began to brag about how unimportant the Divine Visionary position is, which happened to be the title that Rain has right now. Wanting to figure out who's stronger, the two began their battle. While this vicious clash was taking place, Mash and his goons were busy playing some magical version of Monopoly, where Dot had lost most of his points. Lemon got imprisoned for the foreseeable future. Lance, who predicted that this game could predict their future, saw his sister coming back with a boyfriend, while Mash saw himself getting executed for being a lack magic. Finn, however, despite not having a bad role by any means, was looking at how everyone was interacting at how terrible this game is, as he thought about the old man's hopes from earlier. Back to Rain, despite his best efforts, he found himself pinned down completely by Macaroni, who revealed that his reason to seek stimulation is because boredom is as good as death. Insulted by how Macaroni was looking down on him, as well as his blind desire to eliminate Mash, the Rubicon had been crossed for Rain. According to Wahlberg, Rain could be aloof at times, and that having him going against Macaroni will cause him a lot of trouble. However, he was certain that Rain acts always with the intention of protecting what's right in mind. After all, Rain is one of the mages blessed by God for being a three-liner, as he was the very first three-liner to ever exist in the Academy. Indeed, this revelation had shocked Macaroni to the core, as he insisted that he will support Mash in his journey to change people's perspective on non-magic users. As for Mash, seeing that he kept on losing the game time and again, he decided to take a walk outside for a moment, and by that I mean running around as fast as inhumanly possible, just to eat a massive cream puff in the woods. Before he could take a bite, however, he took notice of the battle taking place behind him. Although taken aback by Rain being a three-liner, Macaron was confident that Rain would still not be able to use magic in his current state. Despite that, Rain still figured that Macaron's actions are merely serving orders plans, as well as mentioning what makes Mash a cut above the rest compared to other lack magicals. Declaring that Mash is fighting against his own destiny, Rain added that he cannot be defeated by a nobody like Macaron. Despite that, Macaron not only remained indifferent to Rain's speech, but he got Tron and Cello to attack Rain with him. Before he knew it, Rain summoned God's powers from his wand, which not only parried Macaron's spells, but unleashed a devastating attack at Macaron that cannot be shielded no matter what. Seeing that this battle was over, Mash emerged out of the woods to thank Rain. The latter initially downplayed the whole thing, before making it clear to Mash that losing is not an option in his Mash's case, which is why he must win and give a meaning to his challenge. Deep in the woods, Macaron carried his injured fellas, as he couldn't stop thinking about what a three-liner could do in a battle. As Cello apologized for blundering, Macaron didn't mind it, assuring his companions that this isn't over yet. Once they got back to their dorm, Finn was a bit disappointed that they didn't get much money from Lang, even though Mash thought that 3 coins per person is pretty good. Lance kept on making promises to his sister's picture. Dot was too hyped to sleep, while Mash was having a serious talk with his old man, who had learned about the conditions that Order had set for him to stay in the academy, before apologizing for getting him into this mess to begin with. Despite that, Mash pointed out that despite all odds, he's the happiest he could ever be thanks to his pops. Hearing this, the old man was relieved, and bid Mash farewell before heading back to the academy. It's now the first exam's launch day, which would require 10 coins for each of the 3 levels to take their exams. Because of Innocent Zero this time, however, the exam's date was pushed forward, with the required coins reduced from 10 to mere 3. Aware that Macaron decided to take part in this exam, Wahlberg became concerned that Mash's journey here won't be easy. Speaking of Mash, he was on his way to get to the arena, when Order came in his way to yap about how much of a superior being he is for being born a mage, while belittling Mash. In response, Mash unveiled his body and began to flex it like your average gym bro, while claiming that he'll do his best for the sake of his loved ones. Once he entered the arena, the public couldn't cease to whisper about the fact that Mash can't use magic, before starting to boo him to leave the arena. Seeing this, Finn thought of encouraging Mash, but he was surprised to see how disappointed he felt, to the point he was wanting to go home. Nevertheless, he remained with the other 11 candidates in this exam. Their first event will be a deathmatch called Detervent Haunt. Their main objective will be to find a key contained inside a troll goosefish. Finn was relieved when he heard that, but became horrified when he heard that they'll be haunted by 3 bloodthirsty Detervents. With all the other contestants being ready save for Finn, who was beyond horrified, the exam began in earnest. The public kept on watching every moment of the event, including Finn, who was embarrassingly stupid for begging to be sent back home, while all the others began their search. While they were at it, one of the participants ran into a dead Everent, oblivious to the fact that they're immune to magic, before getting disqualified for failing the challenge. Simultaneously, the other participants were getting informed of what's going on. It didn't take long for one of them to figure out that the monsters are testing the participants' ability to use magic to escape them. After all, this exam was made to test mages' ability to flee if they were to ever be in such a situation. Except for Mash, who went all in with punching a dead Everett, surprising it and the viewers alike. Although he delivered a devastating blow to it, the monster had the ability to recover instantly from any attacks it received. Left with no other options, Mash made an obvious choice. This time, however, he got someone intervening to reduce his size to completely ditch the dead Everett. It turned out that this was Max's doing, who was aware of the monster's bad sight, to which he used his size control magic on Mash to save him. Aware that this exam cannot be cleared alone, Max struck an alliance with Mash, which the latter accepted. Max proceeded with giving a detailed plan that even I couldn't comprehend, before he made it clear that they should follow the dead events. Meanwhile, Finn was hiding and shaking like crazy. Dot was so frustrated that he alerted the monsters to where he was. We'll get later to Lance, because Max and Mash were on the verge of alerting the dead event to their location, before Mash managing to not do that in style. With their safety assured, the duo found their key. Unheeding Max's advice to be careful from the device that would burst the magical balloon, Mash attempted to put his hand over the device, which got the duo on the run away from the dead event. Once they became safe, the two began to think of a way to extract the key without touching the machine, to which Mash opted to burst the balloon itself, which went just as you might expect. Fortunately for them, they eventually managed to take down the machine below the balloon, and yet the latter refused to be down. After looking at it properly, Mash figured out a plan, which involved Max to increase the balloon's size drastically, before Mash came in and started acting like your epileptic brother in a rave. Although the public was initially taken aback by that, they realized that Mash is attempting to further blow air into the balloon through breakdancing. Eventually Mash left everyone in awe, as he and Max managed to get their first key, albeit they found themselves running away from one Detervant. Once in a safe area, the two thanked one another for their help, before Mash offering the key to Max, since it was thanks to him that he got it in the first place. Max, however, seeing how good-natured person Mash was, decided to let him keep the key and leave the field, assuring him that he can do the rest of the work by himself after getting the gist of it. It didn't take long for misfortune to strike Max, however. Not long after Mash's departure, Max lost an eye after getting attacked by Liu Yang. Left with no other choice, Max decided to stand and fight. Elsewhere, Lance got his key with relative ease, followed up by pretty much everyone else, save for Finn, who was too scared that got frightened by Dot's arrival at first glance. Despite his injury, Dot was eager to help Finn find his key. Eventually, those that got the keys managed to make it out, including Mash, Finn and Dot, who was in a terrible shape after getting Finn's key. With 9 people now making it to the second stage of the exam, there was only one last place, which got reserved for Max, as he left the exam stage first. Or so everyone thought, as it was in fact Liu Yang that emerged victorious. To everyone's shock, Yang began to step violently on the badly injured Max. Not able to bear up with this sight, Mash stood up for his friend, but Yang insisted that he's free to do what he wanted against such a weakling. Not happy with seeing Mash standing against him, he picked a cup of water that was handed to him and threw it on Mash, only for the latter to pick every drop of water into his bottle to drink his protein drink. If that wasn't enough, Mash declared that he saw no reason for Yang to proclaim himself as the strongest, since Mash hadn't seen anyone stronger than him. This got Yang to get worked up that he almost went to blows with Mash, only to be stopped by the tournament commentator. Before long, the commentator declared the beginning of their second event, which saw the participants having their cloaks' colors changing to yellow, red and blue. After explaining the rules and disqualification conditions, Dot and Finn noticed that Mash's brain had short-circuited. As such, Dot began to request that the commentator explain the rules again in monkey terms, just like how I treat my Gen Alpha relatives, before doing so himself. However, Finn's biggest concern was the fact that they'll be going against Lance this time. As they received their crystals, Finn was stunned by the fact that Mash's crystal slipped down and shattered into pieces, followed up by Dot's. Despite that, he and Mash assured Finn that they'll protect his crystal throughout the exam. After realizing that they could be true to their word, the exam began, with everyone finding themselves scattered all over the field, much to Finn's dismay. As for Mash and Dot, it didn't take them long to figure that they're in a paralyzed situation now, which requires them to look for Finn before anything bad could ever happen. Just as Finn was thinking of what he could do to keep his crystal protected, he found himself eavesdropping on Pawn, who was begging Yang to spare him. However, Yang had other plans, as he tortured Pawn before destroying his crystal. Seeing how notorious Yang was, Finn decided to embrace his new identity and become a wall. Although he succeeded at that, his hopes and dreams of safety came crashing down when he learned that Yang had figured out his position. As he begged for his life in the most humiliating way possible, Yang realized who Finn truly was, as he felt nothing but disgust towards him stepping a foot in the academy. After all, he might have gotten in thanks to his brother's help. As such, he ordered Finn to hand over his crystal. Although intimidated and scared, Finn refused to hand over his crystal, and even was about to pull out his wand for the fight, before getting stopped in his tracks by Yang, who got back into terrorizing Finn psychologically. While Mash was running at top speed looking for Finn, Macaron was thinking of the most interesting candidates in this exam, namely Mash, Lance, and most importantly for him, Yang, who reminds him of himself the most. Aware that he'd become a divine visionary if these three were not in, Macaron began to feel thankful, especially for Order, whom he assumed that he cut a deal with Yang to get him to participate in this tournament. As he began to recall how much of a prodigy Yang is, Macaron began to pay his gratitude for all living creatures. Although Yang's reputation precedes him, Finn was still refusing to give up his crystal to him. Instead, Finn opted to finally display what he's capable of by tricking Yang into making him run away. Although Yang believed that he'll catch him anyway, he realized that he got teleported to where he took down Pawn. Although he thought he escaped Yang, Finn found himself getting injured in the thigh, with Yang stepping in his injury while insisting that Finn must hand over his crystal. Livid by Finn's refusal, Yang decided to attack him relentlessly, which got the public to admit that Yang is taking it a step too far. Finn was aware of his less-than-perfect personality, which is exactly why he decided to put up a fight. It was a short-lived endeavor, however, because Yang overwhelmed Finn with his magic. Irritated by his defiance, Yang went ahead to literally finish his opponent off, to the shock and horror of the public. Fortunately for Finn, Mash arrived to save his life. As he was about to check on Finn, Mash noticed his forehead was bleeding, only to learn that the damage he got was because of Yang's wand, which works like an Uno reverse card. Mash didn't believe it at first, but it didn't take him long to realize what was going on eventually. Watching this from afar was Wahlberg, who was aware that Yang is making full use of his ancient wand. As Yang kept on hurting himself to inflict as much damage on Mash, the latter decided not to sit idle, as he began to punch his opponent, even though he kept on receiving the same damage he inflicted on Yang. Fed up with what he considered fruitless effort, Yang decided to insult Finn for being a loser hanging by his much more successful older brother, to which Mash agreed. However, Mash held an even greater respect and admiration for Finn's determination against the great threat he's facing. As he finished his statement, Mash got back to attacking Yang. Finn thought that the consecutive attacks that Mash is making will be as pointless as the previous attempts. However, Yang became horrified when he noticed that the goddess statue behind him became cracked. Seeing this, Mash intensified his attacks until the statue's jaw's shell broke completely. This impressed Yang, as the statue became more defensive, just like your crazy ex. After Yang and his goddess statue attacked Mash with everything they got, Mash responded by pulling his iron wand, which he transformed with the power of his fingers into a tennis racket. Witnessing this ongoing fight, the public were impressed by Mash's ability to dodge the statue's syringes while keeping on attacking it with the metal ball he's throwing at her, until he managed to overwhelm her and ultimately destroying her once and for all. With the statue gone, Mash delivered the coup de grace upon Yang, which knocked him out of the tournament for good. With this fight ending in a decisive victory for Mash, Finn apologized to him for getting him hurt so badly. However, Mash didn't hold a grudge. Instead, Mash thanked Finn for being his friend, while making sure that he can stay friends with all the others. As Mash helped Finn stand, Yang began to realize how much pain he inflicted upon them both, as well as Finn's tenacity for the sake of his friends, which were things that Yang lacked. If that wasn't bad enough for Yang, Macaron met both his teammates, whom he compared their magical power to the musical tone Riire. Instead of caving into Macaron's demands, the two mages decided to put up a fight, where it had proved to be futile, as Macaron defeated them with ease, thus eliminating Yang's team out of the tournament for good. With this news becoming public knowledge to all other participants, as well as Dot, who didn't do anything, this round of the tournament is now over, with Dot and Mash celebrating their victory like your average Fortnite dance. However, the fun couldn't last for long, as the public and Wahlberg became well aware that with Yang now out of the race, Mash's real challenge will start now, as he's now left to face off Macaron. Mash himself was aware of that, so much that his guts, namely Mike, had warned him of Macaron too, much to Finn's surprise. Elsewhere, Caldo also addressed that same topic to Wahlberg, who was already concerned about Mash's performance in the next exam. After all, Rain managed to become a divine visionary because Macaron didn't participate in last year's tournament. To further demonstrate that, Caldo, who serves as the head of Magic Talent Administration, stated that the closest candidate to become a divine visionary this year is none other than Macaron. Despite that, Caldo giggled at the mention of one Roman emperor's friend. Just kidding, it's at the thought that Wahlberg is clearly taking Mash's side. As for Macaron, LeBlanc, no, not the League of Legends champion, was still frustrated at his disqualification in the first exam, so he decided to invigorate Macaron to take that lack magic student out of the tournament. Despite that, Macaron warned him to not interfere, or else he'll eliminate him. Of course, that same threat went for Order, who decided to not step in, as long as Macaron does the job. For Mash, however, he was talking about his hard training journey, just like any radical Jimbro in any podcast, while Dot was playing the violin in the background, and Finn was wondering why Mash was talking on his own. Before he knew it, Lemon began to do the same thing, except that she was talking about why she's being an emotional burden, which confused Finn, even more so when he saw Dot crashing down when he got rejected yet again by Lemon. While they were at it, they were taken aback by Caldo's arrival, who Mash immediately identified as the person that bullied him on their last encounter. With some time left before the next exam, Caldo requested that he play a little game with Mash. To Finn's surprise, Mash refused. When Caldo identified his position and the purpose of his visit, however, Mash became so fixated on playing that game with Caldo, to the point he began to sound like AI repeating the same wrong answer. Hearing this, Caldo stated that the rules will be simple. If Mash wins, he'll get a free pass from the exam with no questions. As for the game's nature, it's if you look you lose. Although it was absurd to Finn and Dot, Mash became so excited that he agreed to play the game. To further increase the game's difficulty, Caldo carved a circle around Mash and forbade him from leaving it, as he counted backwards from 3.
3、1。
With the game rules fully stated, the game started. Mash managed to successfully dodge the first attack while still following the rules, but that wasn't the end of it. He still also managed to get past the second round without difficulty. When it came to the third round, Caldo drew his sword out, as it was burning in black flames that would burn anything until it turned to ashes. Finn urged him to withdraw, but as much as Mash wanted to do so, it was already too late. Caldo attacked him from multiple directions, but just as he thought he caught him in a position where he couldn't dodge the incoming attack, Mash planted his feet into the circle and extracted the circle itself off the ground to dodge the attack, before getting back in place. Just as Mash thought he won, a bird came in to steal his puff cream from his cloak. As he looked at the bird flying away, Mash realized that he lost. Despite that, Caldo decided to consider the challenge as a draw, even though he still made it clear that it'd be difficult for Mash to win against Macaron at his current level, before excusing himself outside the room. As he left, Mash couldn't shake off the thought that he could have been in grave danger if Caldo didn't hesitate. On the other hand, Caldo couldn't stop thinking about how Mash was about to take on his attack with his forehead initially. Although he couldn't figure Mash's reason to go after the Divine Visionary position, Caldo couldn't help but giggle at how great is the difference between Mash and the other Divine Visionaries. The time for the next exam to start has arrived, and so did the participants. Their exam will be a 1v1 fight. With the rules explained, the first participants finally stepped in, namely Mash and Macaron. For Mash, there were even greater stakes on the line, most importantly his future. If he wants to secure it, he has to defeat Macaron. Naturally, this won't be an easy task, as Macaron is a formidable mage, and he won't let Mash win just like that. Before the commentator could declare the start of the match, however, Mash requested some extra time to eat his puff, before Macaron requested he join him in eating his fried shrimp, which he dipped too deep in his tartar sauce. Mash questioned that, only for Macaron to reveal that he's using fried shrimps to eat the sauce. From afar, Caldo was confident that Order's decision to take down Mash was right, which is why Order did not make a move since then until this point. With Macaron finally pulling out his wand, the duel began. He unleashed so much magical power that Finn began to feel ill. Nevertheless, Mash charged towards his opponent, as he was ready to toss back Macaron's incoming attack. However, not only Mash found himself unable to push the ball back, but he found himself getting pushed back to the wall. This wasn't the end of it. As the dust cleared off the wall, Macaron was surprised that Mash wasn't pinned to the wall, as he managed to sneak his way behind him and pull him high into the sky, before turning a 180 and crashing down on the floor. Realizing that Mash is capable of matching Macaron's attacks, Dot became somewhat relieved. Despite that, the fight was just beginning, as Macaron turned out to be not hurt in the slightest. Unbeknownst to everyone at the academy, a horde of dragons are still on their way to the Colosseum, with one shadowy figure standing atop a dragon, looking forward to encountering Mash. Meanwhile, Macaron got back to attacking Mash with renewed vigor, while the latter kept on dodging his opponent's attacks. Just as he was about to deliver a punch of his, Macaron turned around to attack, before the two surprisingly stopped without delivering on their attacks, since Mash insisted on protecting his puff, in a strange display of chivalry. It was so weird to the point that Dot began to wish he would get refunded for the wasted time. However, Lance was well aware that they're not unleashing their full potential yet. With the fighting resuming, Macaron unleashed a powerful attack of his. Mash tried to repel it with his punch, only to find himself going deaf in the process. To further demonstrate the difference in power between them, Macaron began to attack Mash multiple times with the same attack, with Mash barely managing to remain standing. Disappointed that Mash proved not to be a good match for him, Macaron decided to go all in with the big guns and finish off the duel, much to Order's happiness. Caldo, on the other hand, saw no need for Macaron to go all in, since Mash wasn't anywhere close to his level. A massive blunder as Mash merged from underground, dragging Macaron down. In fact, Mash managed to dig his way down before the audio wave could even hit him. The deeper he went underground, the less effective the oscillations became. Before he knew it, Macaron found himself kicked away by Mash, much to the public's amazement. This wasn't the end of it. Mash went to even greater lengths, where he pinned down Macaron with his entire body and began punching him in the face relentlessly, and didn't stop until Macaron decided that he finally started taking Mash seriously. How, you might ask? By transforming into a femboy. Although he declared Mash guilty for getting him to transform into whatever the hell this is, Mash couldn't help but giggle, as if he heard the name of a Roman emperor's friend. Meanwhile, Ryo couldn't help but wonder how Mash is actually doing, while looking at himself in the mirror, when Sean suddenly rushed in to inform him about Innocent Zero approaching the campus, much to his shock. As for Mash's duel, he couldn't help but mock Macaron for transforming, before the latter using his magic to get too uncomfortably close to Mash that he fell on his knees. While Macaron kept on yapping about how his spells work, Mash surprised him with an incoming punch. However, Macaron used his magic to teleport while hitting Mash time and again. Despite his best efforts, Macaron couldn't take down Mash. Frustrated by this turn of event, Macaron went ahead with one last attack to finish Mash off. Just as he thought he's about to beat Mash, the latter disappeared, before reappearing behind Macaron. Macaron tried to clap his fingers, only to find his fingers covered in cream. No pun intended. Unable to make any sound, Macaron was left at Mash's mercy. Although he suffered a heavy blow from Mash, Macaron decided to pull one last ace up his sleeve. After admitting that Mash is a worthy opponent, Macaron summoned a colossal ring bell which would eliminate anyone within the range of 2 kilometers away from it. For you Freedom Unit fanatics, that's roughly 1.25 miles. In order to prevent the bell from ever ringing, Mash will have to retrieve the wand off of Macaron's hand while they're both moving at the speed of sound. Although the bell's effect will be contained solely inside the arena, Lance was well aware that Mash is now caught in a predicament. As Mash struggled against Macaron, things were seemingly dire, until Mash decided to rip off a gigantic block off the ground and severely limit Macaron's movements. Macaron tried to outrun Mash by trying to take one of the available paths, only to be taken aback by Mash catching his cloak using his pinky, before taking his wand off and destroying it. Left with no other options, Macaron admitted defeat. Although everyone was happy by this turn of events, Order was not. This would prove to be the least of his problems, however, as Innocent Zero pinned everyone in place by the time he arrived. Once he emerged from the crack he made in the sky, Innocent Zero froze everyone in place, before moving to where Mash was alongside Cell. In fact, Innocent Zero was so relieved to finally see Mash alive as he claimed that he was his son. Just as he was on the verge of incorporating Mash into him to finish off his full transformation into the special snowflake he wanted to be, Wahlberg came in to prevent him from doing so. After a brief standoff, Wahlberg made it clear that he's not gonna allow any more disorder in the academy, as well as being the one to prevent him from meddling with his students. Seeing how eager Wahlberg is to put his life on the line for the sake of his students, Garrett decided to be the one to take him down. Little did he know that Wahlberg possessed a ruthless bloodthirst that paralyzed Garrett for the foreseeable future. This didn't sit well with Innocent Zero, who didn't want to see his men getting bullied. Before long, Innocent Zero declared that all he wants is to be a perfect human. If you're wondering what that means, he meant immortal, strong, and beautiful. This might sound fine, until Wahlberg heard that his counterpart wouldn't mind taking lives to achieve that objective. For that reason, Innocent Zero brought what he considers as his family with him. Heck, even Mash was there for him, which is why Innocent Zero wants to take him back home. This didn't sit well with Wahlberg, who decided to unleash his power with Innocent Zero following suit. The latter used his magic immediately to summon monsters from underground, which made Wahlberg free a handful of powerful mages from Zero's spell, hoping to have them deal with the monsters, while he took down Innocent Zero himself. Of course, Wahlberg entrusted the students to Mash, to which the latter agreed and went down to business, followed up by Macaron, Lance, Dot, Caldo, and of course Order. Although they became quickly aware of how tough the fight might be, the students kept up a dogged resistance. While they were at it, Wahlberg took Innocent Zero high up to continue their fight. If the sheer number of monsters wasn't enough trouble for the students, however, they quickly became aware of a new threat materializing nearby. Cell had created a colossal spiked tree, which he intends on throwing up on the arena. To add insult to injury, Macaron noticed that the monsters were attacking everyone except for Mash, who was sitting idle with this mayhem taking place. After informing Dot of his womanly hunch, Dot urged Mash to leave, as he's the only one that can thwart Innocent Zero's plans. Mash quickly agreed and went straight ahead to make for Cell's tower. The latter was confident that his tower is so colossal that it'll take ages for anyone to climb it. What he didn't expect was Mash kicking the tower down piece by piece until they came on sort of equal footing. Furthermore, Cell was taken by surprise when Mash couldn't even remember who he was. While these developments were taking place with Mash, things were not looking good for the other mages, as one of the criminal mages, namely Sitter Baby, had turned Dot into a toddler. This made Dot unable to use his magic, to the point he ran away to seek help from Lance, who, despite not understanding a word he's saying, did indeed save Dot from another incoming attack. This would prove to be detrimental for him, however, as now Lance will have to babysit Dot, while making sure he deals with all incoming monsters, which, despite his best efforts to not fall for Sitter's magic, he eventually got caught by it. Although they kept on dodging monster attacks in their current shape, it is clear that Sitter was confident that he'll defeat them in this one-sided fight. Dot was terrified by this prospect, but Lance managed to use what little magic he still could muster to pin Sitter down. This wasn't surprising for Caldo, however, as he was certain that the Academy has plenty of talented mages like Lance. Before long, Lance and Dot managed to get back to their original form. Meanwhile, Ryo and Sean were on their way to the Coliseum. Many years ago, a man called Adam created the Divine Visionary class, and because he had godlike powers, he became the very first Divine Visionary of the Academy, with both Wahlberg and Innocent Zero being his top students. For Ryo, although he kept on assuring Sean that everything will be fine, he was anxious that Innocent Zero might emerge victorious. Back to Adam's former students, Wahlberg was taken by surprise when he saw that Innocent Zero became faceless, even more so when he realized that his former friend had abandoned his humanity altogether. Despite that, Innocent Zero saw nothing wrong with what he did, nor with his greed being limitless. When he claimed that all he wants today is to take Mash back home with him and eliminate Wahlberg, the latter's back became against the wall. To make sure that the latter objective of his would be achieved, Innocent Zero went as far as to reveal his forbidden spell to Wahlberg. On a somewhat unrelated note, Cell couldn't help but be stunned at the fact that Mash forgot who he is. Despite his threats, Mash couldn't help but see him as a puff, which infuriated Cell to the point he began attacking Mash. If that wasn't enough, Cell made an oath to go after Walker and Razor, who survived his attack on their last encounter, once he's done with him first. Misinterpreting the dumb look on Mash's face as defiance, Cell began his attack in earnest. Although he came to this fight well prepared, Cell couldn't believe that Mash was running over every piece of debris thrown at him, which ended up in Mash eventually getting in range of Cell and punching him in the face. To add insult to injury for Cell, Mash remembered who he was and mocked him for using the same trick twice against him. Back in the day, Adam was a genius of magic, as he was the one that institutionalized the use of magic, as well as systemizing magic education. Despite being a very influential figure in the magic world, his effort in his later years became shifted towards social assistance, especially to help those that are unable to use magic. To make sure that there could be more to be built on the foundation he laid, he entrusted his best 3 students, including Wahlberg, to maintain that. By now, however, Wahlberg came to the realization that Innocent Zero went as far as to learn the forbidden spell, which is restoring life. In this case, Innocent Zero applied that spell on the corpse of his late teacher Adam, albeit he couldn't restore his personality. To add insult to injury, Adam's corpse will be controlled by Necros Mance. This was the last straw for Wahlberg, which made him decide to fight, even though he's going to fight Necros through his master. Little did he know that Innocent Zero managed to restore his master's body in its prime, including the magical power he used to have at that time. Hearing this, Wahlberg began to remember what Adam taught him about a policy called noblesse oblige, which, despite not being able to understand why Adam decided to go for it when Wahlberg was much younger, the former assured that his student will understand it eventually because he's strong. As such, Wahlberg managed to bring out his own power to nullify his master's attack. On top of that, Wahlberg declared that what matters the most now is the present time, and that he won't show no mercy to anyone that dares to cause chaos in this time, even if it was his master. Although Wahlberg being the strongest in this current magic realm, Necros was well aware that Adam's powers were far superior than Wahlberg's, which became evident when one attack had annihilated a good chunk of a mountain behind the former student. On top of that, Adam's powers can also send other people's magical powers to the void, rendering them unable to use magic completely. As he came to learn of all that, Necros began to brag about his new toy, like your average PC builder, before going to launch a powerful attack against Wahlberg. To his surprise, Wahlberg managed to nullify the attack like a breeze, and even went as far as to launch a successful counterattack that had briefly pacified Necros. Although agonized by the severity of the attack, the damage was not lethal. Necros thought that he figured out how Wahlberg's magic worked, so he decided to hit him with even greater dark magic to overwhelm him. However, his powerful attack got dashed away by Wahlberg's magic once more. Necros attempted desperately to launch one last powerful attack, hoping that it'll work out this time. However, Wahlberg smiled, as he was merely using the wand's powers, which he used now to shatter through his master's dark magic, and eventually eliminate his master's body and Necros in one go. Although he was disappointed that Wahlberg's powers hadn't declined yet, he wasn't going to give up so easily. At the Colosseum, Dot and Lance's struggle against the monsters still have no end in sight, with Order and Caldo still assisting them, even though the latter was so eager to go help Mash. Speaking of which, Mash still had no idea about why he's being targeted, to which he learned that Innocent Zero was intending to use him to become an immortal, since they're blood related. Although being shocked by the revelation that he's Innocent Zero's son, Mash compared his forceful sacrifice to eating protein to gain more muscles. Before feeling so disappointed, he decided to fall asleep, much to Cell's chagrin. After waking Mash up, he began to brag about how honorable it is to be Innocent Zero's son. Alright, but is he his son too? Absolutely pass. Then why is Cell bragging non-stop? Beats me. Neither why he's so infuriated that one of Zero's sons turned out unable to use magic in the first place. Fortunately for me and you guys, Mash decided to knock some sense into that bragging influencer wannabe, even though he wasn't done talking. Seeing how indifferent he is to being worthless, as well as how eager he is to keep on fighting him, Cell was on edge to the point that he decided to go all in. His powers were dangerously high to the point that Dot and his comrades took notice of it from inside the Colosseum. Cell unleashed his diamond discs, which were dodged by Mash. That didn't stop Cell from bragging about how good his diamond discs are, like your elitist PC builder. including how they'll never stop until they cut Mash down to shreds. Indeed, Mash found himself in a dance with death itself, as the disc starts coming and they don't stop coming, fed to the rules as they hit the ground running. It didn't take him long to realize that he'll have to ignore the discs while making his way immediately to strike Cell. However, he also noticed that he has been struggling against 2 discs so far, and dealing with 4 will be nigh impossible. Emboldened by his position, Cell began to threaten Mash that he'll eliminate every single person in the arena if he dares to run away. What he didn't expect, however, was that after unleashing 2 discs once again, Mash did something unexpected. He ran away. Just as Cell began to think that Mash might have abandoned his friends at the Coliseum, Mash jump-scared him from behind, after making an entire loop to shake the discs off his back. Although surprised by that, Cell protected his own skin using magic, as he got the discs to hurt Mash. His plan seemed to work out, as he began to kick Mash's head, when he suddenly began to feel a strange texture. It turned out that he had been stepping on a big cream puff, which Mash cut down to shove huge chunks of it into Cell's mouth. No pun intended. This kept on happening until Cell began to choke and pass out. In fact, none of that actually happened, as Mash was in reality choking Cell while he was hoping that the discs would hit Mash at any given moment. They never did, as Mash managed in a fraction of a second to nullify the discs entirely by paralyzing Cell and getting him to hallucinate through asphyxiation. With Cell defeated, the diamond spikes he had in the skies also shattered, and their threat also became nullified, thus securing the students' safety. While these developments were taking place, Ryo and Sean finally arrived at the academy, even though their journey took as long as Captain Tsubasa would score a goal. Despite that, Ryo couldn't help but fix his own hair, while still flying. Seeing that there's no point to shun his superior, Sean thought it's best to hurry their way to the Coliseum. Before he knew it, he got frozen in time. Ryo didn't fall for the same trick, however, but he became aware of the seriousness of the threat the academy is facing. After making it safely to the arena, Ryo became relieved to see Order and Caldo safe and sound, even though the latter informed him that they couldn't have done it without help from Lance, Dot and Macaron. As for Mash, he was doing better than you and I, as he was sitting down, drinking tea and eating cream puffs, with an unconscious Cell laying wickedly on the ground. However, Ryo became quickly concerned when he learned that Wahlberg is now engaged in a fight against Innocent Zero, and their whereabouts are still unknown. Hearing this, Mash volunteered to look for him, using every Jimbro's precious treasure, his muscles. Once Mash was disappearing from the scene, Porter couldn't help but begin doubting his abilities, before turning his attention to interrogating Cell. As he was about to start, however, Cell got protected by a shield that took him out of the arena immediately. While Order was surprised by what happened, Macaron was well aware that this is somebody else's doing, which got Order to launch an investigation over the lurker's identity. Ryo, however, opposed this, as he didn't want their efforts to be spread thinly so that they wouldn't be able to protect the students. Although this was bitter for Caldo, he entrusted Wahlberg with defeating Innocent Zero, while he and the others will protect the students with their lives. While Mash was gone on a search for Wahlberg, the latter was still engaged in his spiel with Innocent Zero. The latter attempted to freeze time, but Wahlberg rendered the attack useless for him, before making it to his opponent's blind spot and launching an attack of his own, which didn't accomplish much either. To make matters worse, Zero applied his time magic on Wahlberg, and began to render an arm completely useless. Despite that, Wahlberg still had considerable strength, which used in an attempt to break through his time freeze spell. However, this had no effect on Zero, who managed to save himself at the last second. Now Zero used his magic once again to take down Wahlberg's infected arm. Met with the hopelessness of the situation, and with Zero bragging about the importance of prioritizing himself over others, as if he was capitalist to the core, Wahlberg began to recall how Adam used to always be by his side, no matter how cold he treated him at first, until eventually he learned that Adam simply cannot leave him alone, which is why now Wahlberg is not willing to abandon anyone that he had saved, let alone those that stood by his side. For that reason, Wahlberg decided to go for broke and unleash one final attack, which trapped Zero in a different dimension, with Wahlberg in charge of a large puppet there. Zero tried to freeze time there, but the domain itself nullified that. Just as Wahlberg was about to finish off Zero, the latter unexpectedly froze time inside the domain and landed some fatal wounds on his old friend. Just as he unfroze time, however, Zero realized that the magical attack on the puppet is still charging. After all, Wahlberg had used every bit left of his strength into the wand's core, so if anything happened to him, the attack would be launched on its own, much to Zero's dismay. Although Wahlberg was well prepared for this very moment, he was disappointed that he won't be there to see Mash and his friends reaching their goal to live in a much better world than the current world. Now, a world where all frail or mischievous souls will be able to get on their feet and move on the right path. For Wahlberg, that is noblesse oblige. Seeing the magical attack unleashed, everyone who was unfrozen in time took notice of it. Although they didn't know what happened yet, some were well aware that this is Wahlberg's doing. Rain in particular had a bad feeling about this massive magical explosion. He was right, as Wahlberg came out of it alive, so did Zero. In fact, he was nowhere close to scratching Zero. The latter used his magic to attack Wahlberg, who despite his dogged resistance, ended up losing his wand. Still, Zero wasn't willing to let his former classmate fall down just like that. Just as he was on the verge of finishing off the helpless Wahlberg, and just as the latter was down in tears after the world he envisioned becoming a mere fantasy, Mash kicked Zero in the jaw, surprising both Zero and Wahlberg in the process. Before we proceed with our story, I'd like to emphasize that Mash is using his legs to remain floating. At the Colosseum, Ryo and the others were surprised to see that all the monsters had not only ceased to spawn, but to move altogether. When Caldo explained it as Zero's time magic, he decided to take his broomstick and head to search for Wahlberg. Speaking of which, Wahlberg was completely taken by surprise by Mash's arrival. Despite his warnings, Mash refused to leave, claiming that he was raised to treat elderly with respect. On the other hand, Zero began to act like your missing father after hearing you've won the lottery, as he hoped that Mash will come with him. Seeing that his son refused, Zero decided to trap them both. As Zero stole Wahlberg's magic, Mash merged out of the barrier with a severely weakened old man. To demonstrate his powers, Zero pulled the same spell that Wahlberg used to eliminate Necros earlier, much to Wahlberg's chagrin. Once this show of force was over, Zero began to aim at Mash as his next target. The latter began to attack his neglecting father, until Zero retaliated back by almost catching him in a dark magical sphere. Hadn't Mash got enough distance at the last second? Just as Zero began to brag once more about his intentions of taking Mash back home with him, karma struck him at the worst possible timing for him. His magical capacities were beyond what his body can handle, so after giving it some thought, Wahlberg realized that Zero was well aware of that, and that he's now desperate to take Mash home to use him as a new host for his soul and magic. Despite that, Zero decided to shift his tone from your neglecting father to some low-tier god, as he engaged in an insults battle with Wahlberg about Mash's fate. As for Mash, his head was in the cloud. Despite that, Zero still had the ability to control his powers for the time being, while Mash was able to match that by helping Wahlberg dodge incoming attacks, while assuring the old man that Zero is definitely worth defeating with the power of his muscles. Hearing this, and aware that he's in no shape to fight for longer, Zero decided to peace out for the time being, while assuring Mash and Wahlberg that this won't be the end of it. Before his departure, Zero used his magic on all the monsters he spawned in the arena. Although Macaron saw no point in taking away deceased monsters, Caldo was aware that things are different, since this is Zero they're dealing with. Indeed, the spell that Zero casted wasn't to take away all of his monsters, but to merge them all into a massive behemoth. As he left, Zero made it clear that he wants to see if Mash will take that monster down. For Wahlberg, this is a daunting task, as this monster possesses great power to wipe out an entire town. Unfortunately for Wahlberg, he lost control of his magic, to the point he could no longer float, and he could have been a goner, hadn't Ryo arrived just in time to prevent Wahlberg from meeting his end. Although he was concerned about his master's injuries, Ryo was perhaps even more concerned about Mash, as his current whereabouts now are unknown. By the time Zero left the scene, his time freeze magic disappeared, and after seeing the monster before them, panic became the order of the day. Walker and his goons were aware that this is innocent Zero's doing, while Lemon was wondering when her hero will show up to save the day. As the monster began to throw rubble at the public, Lance intervened just in time to save countless lives, albeit Dot was creeped out by Lance's sister complex. Nevertheless, Lance's initiative paved the way for Macaron to destroy the rubbles, while ordering the public to leave immediately. Undaunted by the colossal Titan entry style this monster had, Dot decided to use his magic to deter it, only for the monster to pull a magical shield that nullified incoming attacks. After getting an explanation over what that shield is from Caldo, the latter revealed that Order is already after the guy controlling this monster, before leaving with Dot to join his comrade, thus leaving Lance and Macaron to fight, while the students were unable to leave the Colosseum. By the time Caldo and Dot made it out of the Colosseum through the secret passage, the monster was already on the verge of eliminating God knows how many innocent souls there. Before they knew it, the monster couldn't get to even touch the Colosseum. In fact, it began to get dragged away, much to the surprise of everyone, except for Walker, who immediately figured that this is Mash's doing. Perhaps Finn was the most surprised of all, as he expected that Mash is capable of overcoming anything, but this is a new height. Before long, every student in the arena learned about what Mash was doing. Instead of cheering for him for saving their lives, however, they began to stand against someone that can't use magic to be on top of their school. This stance couldn't last for long, as the sight of Mash bleeding out in desperate defense for the students there got him so much support from a few hesitant sounds initially, which erupted into a massive wave of support. Perhaps the first to notice this change of heart was Finn, who after getting moved by this atmosphere began to cheer for Mash, thus getting his friend the motivation he needed to finally overpower the monster and throw it so far away, to the point that he broke mountains outright. With the threat being sent to oblivion, the students erupted in joy, while Finn and Lemon went straight up to Mash. Lemon in particular was so impressed that she hoped that she might get Mash to eat. Indeed she did, but not what you or she had in mind. Our boy eats cream puffs because he's based. Elsewhere, Wahlberg woke up in his bed, with Rio having a call from a distance, before informing the old man of Mash's decisive and heroic victory, much to Wahlberg's relief. After all, Mash is the person that embodies the noblesse oblige concept the most in this magical world. Elsewhere, Dot and Caldo managed to get to where the puppeteer behind the monster was, where they left the coup de grace for Orter to deal. Despite becoming aware of Mash's victory, Orter frowned at Caldo for siding with Mash, as he remained as uncompromising as ever. On the other hand, Caldo didn't fully support Mash, but he still believed that Mash's powers were legit, so he should accept the final outcome as is. A few days later, the news of what happened at the academy reached the entire world. However, the narration in the newspaper portrayed the divine visionaries as the ones that drove Innocent Zero and the monster he summoned away. Aside from that, the Bureau of Magic issued further fortifications and extra security layers to be implemented. As for Mash, the true hero of this entire spiel, couldn't bear the burden of this incident, so he packed his bags and went on vacation with his friends. Finn remained doubtful about having a vacation, but Dot assured him that this is the best time possible to have fun. What type of fun they'll have, you might ask? Throwing a slaughter melon at Mash's face, which got its chance to suck on Mash's blood, which can be life-threatening in the worst-case scenario, much to Finn's shock. If that wasn't enough, Mash managed to save himself by smashing the slaughter melon, which was inedible to Finn. While Mash and Dot were having fun, Lance, Finn, and Lemon were disappointed that the Divine Visionaries made Mash their scapegoat, after learning that he's Innocent Zero's son. While they were at it, they were taken by surprise when they noticed Wahlberg trying to chill, even though he was in no condition to be at the beach. According to him, as long as Innocent Zero is still alive, Mash will never know real peace. To make matters worse, Zero is now in control of time, magic, and spatial magic, which got enhanced by Zero's forbidden spell. Because of that, Innocent Zero is now considered as the strongest mage to ever exist in the magic realm. If that wasn't enough, his 5 brothers are also all top-tier mages, who are also equivalent to Wahlberg, if not stronger. Although he was aware that they stand little to no chance of victory against Innocent Zero and his goons, Wahlberg was certain that their only hope in this bleak situation is Mash, whose physical strength is so absurd that can overcome any magic. Although Lemon was worried that that might not be right, Mash intervened and assured her that everything will be fine. If anything, his muscles will overcome any difficulties. Although he made grand promises about graduating from the academy with everyone, he was barely prepared for the incoming exams, where if he fails one exam, he'll get expelled immediately, much to Mash's shock and horror. Apparently Mash was known for his stupidity, so much that even Brad was having his doubts about Mash passing the exams. In order to help him out, Lemon held a mock exam for him to take. However, his results were so bad that Mash began wanting to go back home. Hoping to ease tensions off Mash, Dot told him that he's doing well academically, which further freaked out Mash even more. Lance tried helping Mash with his studies, but apparently he couldn't get anything into Mash's skull, so much so that his brain short-circuited. After a brief argument about the importance of studying, Mash seemingly sat down to study, which didn't last for long, as Mash escaped them eventually. The boys tried to reach out to him, but Lance was less keen on getting him back to study, as he's clearly not willing to learn. Finn, however, opposed this, as he went ahead to search for Mash. Although it took him a while, Finn managed to find Mash planted to Earth. Literally, as Mash admitted that studying is the only thing he can't do, Finn encouraged him to get back into studying once more, which made Mash change his mind. After coming back to class and apologizing to his friends for the inconvenience, Mash began to study, with everyone supporting him with everything they've got. On exam day, Mash got so nervous he began to cry. Once he was done, Mash remained so nervous until his professor called him. Although she pointed out that he's known for his rebellious attitude in her classes, as well as his atrocious grades, she admitted that he had done well enough to barely pass. Mash tried to flex, but Dot and Lance didn't allow him to do so. While they were at it, Tom came into the room with news in regard to Mash becoming a divine visionary candidate. To make matters worse, civilians are now rushing to campus. Indeed, there were a huge horde of people in front of the campus, and they were eager to treat him like how witches were treated in medieval times. Finn was too reluctant to step forward, which allowed Lemon this time to step in defense of her future husband. Instead of actually defending him, Lemon came out to merely declare that she's Mash's wife, even though she's not. That clearly didn't help, so it's time for someone else to step in. How about Dot, disguised as Mash's agent? It might have worked well if Dot didn't give the middle finger to the public on behalf of Mash. That didn't help either, as the public ended up throwing rocks at Lemon. Mash tried to get in Lemon's defense, but Lance didn't let him, arguing that that would make things a lot messier. Surprisingly, however, Lemon held her ground, as she relentlessly defended Mash with great zeal, as a thanks for all the help he gave her time and again. Despite that, the same moron that threw a rock at Lemon encouraged the rest of the horde to stone Lemon. Before any more harm could be done to the girl, Mash ended up coming to her rescue. Although that moron managed to lock Mash in a thick prison eventually, Mash broke out of it, much to that citizen's dismay, who got imprisoned in his own cell as a poetic justice for all the mean things he did. After assuring the public himself that everything will be fine, Wahlberg arrived in person to calm the crowd for a bit, while assuring them that his decision was sound, and that it'll need the public a little bit of patience to realize that. Hearing from Wahlberg that he has excellent friends to speak on his behalf, Mash decided to step into the public and promise them that he'll set the precedence for lack magic to become divine visionaries. Although that's a risky statement, Mash had already gone too far to walk away now. How will the rest of his journey be? Only time will tell. That concludes the anime recap. As always, if you enjoyed, let me know down below and I'm out.